could it be haste is making me? What's time at a thing that kill or keep a fire or lose or living? I gotta go faster, keep up the pace, just to stay in the human race. I could go supersonic, the problem's chronic. Tell me, does life exist beyond it? When I need to sate, I just accelerate into oblivion. Into oblivion.
Part.
Buenos nachos, amigos. Welcome to another fine episode of Record Breakers. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan. Here with me is my quorum of yahoos. We have Brett.
Hey. Hey.
We have Patrick.
Hola, folks.
And we have Drew. We are gathered once again to talk about music, share music with each other, as we do every week. Y'all know the plan. Y'all know how it works. This week, it falls upon me to share the music for us, and I chose a real humdinger, an album that's celebrating its 20-year anniversary this year. Kind of a bunt, I'm going to say. But a really cool album, really cool music. Soundgarden's Superunknown, of course, in 1994, kind of was among the many albums in that grunge wave, grunge cavalcade, very much associated with that whole scene. But a very interesting album nonetheless. I'm gonna go around the horn. He's already on camera, so I'm going to say, Drew, did you have any expectations coming into this album?
My expectations, like you said, were, hey, I'm going to get some grunge, and maybe I should put on a flannel shirt. That was about my expectations. I knew Soundgarden from, I guess, the hits, and knowing they were, like, part of that early 90s grunge era that took over alt-rock for a while. And that was sort of the thing. And I was expecting a lot of that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Let's go. All right, Patrick, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I'm reasonably familiar with many Soundgarden songs, but up until this time, I don't think I'd ever listened to a proper record. I have, mixed feelings about grunge in general. Some of it I really like, some of it I really don't. It's like part of me is like, yeah, popular music was better then than it is now because there was at least guitars and drums and stuff. But at the same time, if you've heard one grunge record, you've kind of heard most grunge records. That said, Soundgarden have a couple of really terrific songs, at least one of which is on this record. So I was happy about that.
Yeah. Brett, I have a sneaky suspicion you are fairly familiar with Soundgarden. Tell me about your expectations coming into this experience.
My expectations were I was going to take a trip back to the days of Mortal Kombat, the days of Beavis and Butthead, when I was a little kid and my buddy's older sisters would have all the cool CDs. And, Superunknown was not something that I owned. I had Bad Motorfinger, which is an inferior album to this. But luckily I had like alternative radio through like all the way up to now, which plays like every song on this album almost.
Yeah.
So it's a very well-known album in my brain.
Mm-hmm. And thematically, it's interesting because it's an album. Like I said, Bad Motorfinger came before it. And a couple albums before that, and they've been tooling around with a very punky, very kind of loose sound. But for this record, they kind of switched gears into more of a metal influenced sound that I think was really cool. A little bit more of a mature instrumentation. And it's a lot of things that people talk about. It's like reading about it. It was interesting too. It's like the appropriations of metal and things like that. Also, thematically, the interesting element is the fact that they use so many different odd meters in a lot of the songs, and apparently by accident, which is really cool. Just kind of creating, and then this cool, interesting, complex thing happens when you're creating. Let's go with you guys. Drew, what stood out for you? What caught your attention thematically about this record?
Well, what I got was what I was expecting. I got grunge. And for what it is to you, to me, it reminds me of when I was really, really little, just starting to understand that music existed in the world, I guess. So that was really cool. The thing about it was that, what Soundgarden has is, like you alluded to, they sort of get on good composition almost by accident, which is kind of cool. They have a lot of really cool, like, layering of the guitars, which come from that, like, metal influence, as you said, and it's a really fun record for that. They do a lot of what I find a lot of grunge does from that era, which is we're going to start the song kind of slow and quiet, and then we're going to hit really high on the chorus, and then we're going to dip back down, which is sort of synonymous with that, and, like, save for a few songs, like I think most of the songs did that, which is fine. It's what the sort of genres and sort of what the feel of the record is, which I think is really, really cool. But overall, it was a really, I guess, I don't want to say fun record, because it's a dark record. It's sort of a semi-sad, sort of melancholy feel to it and stuff like that. But for that style of music, it was a fun record, I guess.
It was a fascinating experience.
I feel weird saying fun. Like, yeah. I feel really weird saying fun record for a grunge record when it's all like...
Can I elbow in here? Let me elbow in here, buddy. First off, there is nobody in alternative music of that era that was Chris Cornell. Except for Chris Cornell. Having like the 15 octave range or whatever that dude's got. It was very uncommon for that, and that is about 99% of this album for me. Yes, you said with the metal influences that they had. Yes, they had a lot of drop D tunings, some half step downs, and funny, it's like Nirvana, they at the same time did a lot of tuning down like a half step to make it so that they could hit the vocals without being super high. I don't think they had that problem with Chris Cornell. I mean, that dude, to this day, as a crusty old man, can still hit notes for whatever movie he's doing a soundtrack of, or what other band he's going to break up with in the next year. But like, you got to understand, this dude is huge. He's like 6 foot a ton. And he was a very imposing, long-haired grunge dude from Seattle back in the day. And he was doing things with vocals when most people were making noise rock. So like it kind of stands out in the genre because of how tight the vocals are, or just how like clear and how the guy holds a note in comparison to scream rock.
Yeah. Patrick. What stood out? What got your attention thematically about this record?
I will 100% agree with Brett. Like, literally, the second thing I wrote was Chris Cornell's voice makes this song just about the opening song. Like, if I could go back in time and steal Chris Cornell's voice circa 1994 and steal it for my own use, go through and absorb his powers, whatever sort of, evil magics I have to do. Like, he has an incredible vocal range, and not just the range. Like, we've had people with range before. James LeBray from Dream Theater comes to mind. Cornell had power in his whole range, and his low stuff was almost completely different than his high stuff, and it all kind of he could go from one to the other and back again without missing a beat. And that sort of rings really strong on this record. The other thing is just in general, it's a lot heavier than, say, Pearl Jam and Nirvana were, probably more along the lines of what Alice in Chains was doing at the same time, although I don't know if I'd lump them in as purely a grunge band. They're kind of a metal band.
Well, yeah, Alice in Chains was very much a metal band, but yeah.
very
That's
much
what's
more a metal band, but with little elements of with a lead singer that could have been in a grunge band.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of if that's like the two ends of that era, they definitely lean heavily on the Alice in Chains sign, and I love Alice in Chains, so this works for me. My only real gripe is it's a 70-minute record, and I feel like it's a couple of songs too long. Because there's 4 or 5 really, really terrific songs on here, and a lot of other good songs. And then there's just some stuff that I could have lived without.
This is the heroin era. This is heroin grunge. This is mellow out music.
Yeah.
Just that. Yeah, this is mellow out music.
All your
shoot
songs.
up and check out for the
That's
next
right.
70 some minutes.
So yeah, and like you said, some of that themes and elements in those songs, especially the opening songs. You know, some of the key tracks. You start with that opening song that starts off really well. Like kind of gives you an idea of what you to expect on the rest of the record right from the start. I think it's something that I think is a constant a running thing on our show is how your record starts. And how important that is. I think it's something that it's going to be a running theme on our show. And I think, this is an interesting example of that. Of course,
judging books by covers, it's what we do.
Spoiler alert. Working, like, in a band and with other bands, you do not realize how much talk goes into, all right, we need to figure out the structure specifically of the first 5 songs.
Yes.
Like, we need to figure out the beginning. The rest, whatever. We'll just order those how we want to. What's the order of the first 5?
Yes.
It's super important.
Yes.
Like,
then again, another running theme I think we've had in a couple episodes is this starts off really well, but then it kind of trails off after a while, which has also been another running theme.
Did I mention we need to focus on the first 5 songs?
Exactly.
Whatever, the rest we'll do them. But the first 5.
Other like really cool songs, like Superunknown, the title track is a very prominent song. Black Hole Sun obviously is like the big song. I think one of the most songs that pretty much everyone knows of this record, along with also Spoon Man, starring Artie the Spoon Man. And
old John Smokey does a solo.
Oh, the old, the
OJS approved.
I'm sure Artie the Spoon Man is a big fan of old John Smokey and was influenced by him heavily. But I think one of the songs that the song that is the song that takes me back most instantaneously, most synesthetically, is "Fell on Black Days," because that song is the one that takes me back to listening to 94.9 Zeta, in 1994, 95, in my room, recording Petey radio on my little boombox, that had recording and had a microphone and like recording that song.
It still probably has been. It's right now somewhere across this nation on an alternative rock station.
Yeah.
They are playing that. Clear Channel is beaming that into your radio.
And if
rock.
If
it's
South Florida
classic rock.
If South Florida had an alternative rock station, they would be playing it too as well. But yeah, and that song that brings me back, including the fact that it's a song that is played in 6/4, which is really cool and almost kind of naturally does so. And it's really
Kids,
cool.
go to Wikipedia, look up time signatures. And figure out that
that's 6 quarter notes in a measure.
Yes, which is not.
It's a little bit different feel.
It's two extra from what you normally get.
Yeah,
it's 2 more.
Two better. But yeah. So I'll start with Patrick. What would be some of the key songs for you? The tracks that stood out for you?
So I alluded to my favorite Soundgarden song and one of my favorite songs of the grunge era being on that, and that would be Spoon Man, for several reasons. 1, it's just a cool song. 2, spoons. And 3, it is the most groovy song in a 7 time signature I've ever heard. It grooves so hard in 7, and I don't know how they do that, because I think it's the most difficult thing to plan other than maybe 5, which also shows up on this record.
It alternates between 7/4 and 4/4, and it almost kind of makes like a 12, I think what was it?
13 it would be.
A 13,
if you were, or
8
11
or
if you want to be technical.
Yeah, something like that.
It bounces back and forth. And the vocals on it, I think you get sort of Chris Cornell's sort of power, and then you get like the crazy screechy Chris Cornell, popping light bulbs highs, which I just love that song. And Spoons. I mean,
Spoons. Yes.
And Spoons. When was the last time you heard Spoons on a record that wasn't by Old John Smokey? Because I don't know when it was. It was probably 1994.
I've heard songs that were performed after somebody used a spoon.
Yes.
And a lighter and a syringe.
Hey!
I think that's most of the rest of this record.
I was going to say,
most of probably the whole genre of grunge.
Yes.
Everything that came from Seattle was just shot out of a giant syringe.
Yes.
Could they chase the dragon back in 94? Was that a thing yet, or did that come later?
Well, in 1994, 1994 is when one Kurt Cobain is dead.
Yeah.
This was the tail end of the people were starting to die. I think they had done everything twice by 1994.
Yeah. At this one, yeah. Drew, what would be some of the tracks that stood out for you?
For me, Black Hole Sun is a hit for a reason. The chorus almost begs you to sing along with it. It's a song that's catchy. I think that when they wrote that, there was probably a feeling of the room of, yeah, no, this is the one going on the radio. Like, this is the one that people are gonna get, people are gonna love, and it's there for a reason. Not saying it was manufactured as such, but it's like, yeah, no, this is catchy. Like, this is really cool. Mailman, oddly enough, reminded me of a band from my area called Hate Dies Hard a lot. And Hate Dies Hard is a metal band that takes a lot of influence from that, like, early to mid 90s era grunge and heavy metal and stuff like that. So, like, it made sense, but, like, it reminded me of them almost eerily.
Yeah.
And then there was Kickstand, which sort of came as a nice little surprise towards the latter half. Which was like this up tempo, like kind of cool tune that I kind of dug. So, I mean, those three stood out to me very, 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 very hard. So,
yeah, some really cool tracks. Brett, I'm very curious to see what would be some of those tracks that I think you would think are the key tracks to of this record, that, at least historically for you.
I mean, it opens strong, but I mean, Black Hole Sun, you got to understand that people weren't making songs that sounded like that. I mean, it opens up with this crazy, weird guitar bend. Yeah. That is not a sound that you had ever heard before then done on an album like this, and it's one of the, it's definitely the right length for radio play, but I doubt that was when they were writing that. It doesn't sound like a song that gets people going at a live show. Yeah. You don't think of that being as the get up and go song. But they definitely, Spoon Man is that song is a part of anybody who is of our generation has heard that song enough that we don't have to ever hear it again. It just plays in our head.
Yes.
Or played ATV Off-Road Fury on the PS2.
Yeah. I mean,
when that one came on.
the fact that there are like when I hear ba-dum, 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 I know that I'm listening to Soundgarden. Like I can even just hear like a 2-second segment of this album and be like, oh, okay, I'm listening to Soundgarden. It is definitely their style, and it's not derivative directly from anybody else, and they've really affected a lot of people that came after them. But this is a pretty complete album if you want to take a little trip back in time. But Black Hole Sun, Superunknown is really fun, but Fell on Black Days is like Petey said, that is the song that it sort of stands out. It's a very distilled and pure Soundgarden song.
Yeah.
So much so that they have like 2 or 3 songs that sound kind of like it that came after it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
There definitely was a few songs that came after it that sound like it. Yeah. I think some really fantastic tracks, and like you said, Fell on Black Days takes me back, and like some really fantastic tracks, the vocals and the music, and there's a reason why this record is was successful then and went quintuple platinum. There's a reason for that. It's a really well made record. Let's go with some conclusions. I'll go with Drew again. What would be your thoughts about the record as a whole?
It's 20 years old, you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like Brett said, like I think we've all alluded to, this album is just as, for like the rock and roll set, this album is still as essential listening, now as it was in the 90s. Like, this album, as Brett said, it's something that was their own. Yes, they're a grunge band. Yes, they have heavy metal influences, but they meshed it into something that was completely different than anything that came before it, and influenced, like I said, for Mailman and for another, and it happened a couple other times. It reminds me of bands from the local area that obviously sort of just kind of ripped them off and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's like, that's sort of, it's what they did. There are certain bands that come along that's like, at a certain point, it's almost a caricature, because it's like, like Brett said, you hear it, you know who it is. Like, you hear Alice in Chains riffs, you kind of know, okay, it's Alice in Chains. You hear Soundgarden, it's like, oh, yeah, it's Soundgarden. You hear those things, and it's quintessentially that band. It's what it is. It's laid out there. Like Brett said at the very beginning, Chris Cornell is a vocal monster. Everyone in the band is great musicians. They're smart, and they get high and make music, and then they go, oh, well, that music is awesome. We should do more of this. Yes. So, all the power to them, I guess.
Yeah. Patrick, what would be your thoughts about the album as a whole?
Like I said, my only real complaint is that it's a bit long, but the stuff that's good on it, there's 6 or 8 really, really good songs on it. And Soundgarden, if you enjoy grunge music and you have not, they're sort of like, in the grunge rankings, if number 1's Nirvana for better or worse and number 2 is Pearl Jam for better or worse, they're strong number 3. They're sort of, I don't know, maybe the Slayer to Megadeth and Metallica, sort of the third band in that little movement. And it's a good record, if a bit long. And like the songs that are good on this, Fell on Black Days is fantastic. The opener, Let Me Drown, Spoon Man, Black Hole Sun, like it's probably the first Soundgarden song I ever heard, and I still enjoy it today, which, I probably heard it in the mid 90s, and it's been, 15, 20 years that I've been listening to it, and it still, I don't hate it, which is saying something about a song.
Yeah.
It's especially if you're a little bit younger than us and you missed this era, this is a good idea of what was going on, but also it's unique because Soundgarden was a little bit heavier than their peers.
Mm-hmm.
And the guitar playing is good on it, and Chris Cornell's freaking voice.
Yeah.
Just damn.
Brett, I'm interested in hearing what you say. What are your thoughts on the album as a whole?
On the album as a whole, go out and listen to it. Then, when you're done, go listen to Temple of the Dog. Then, when you're done, go listen to Audio Slave. And then, when you're done, listen to the soundtrack to Casino Royale. And you'll understand why those bands all stood out.
You're gonna say you're the guy who likes Audio Slave for Chris Cornell. I'm the guy who likes Audio Slave for Tom Morello. I
don't hold with that, bub. That band is all holding a note. But yes,
I don't like Audio Slave was not the sum of its parts to me. But I agree
that the two bands that formed it were better individually than they were
I
together.
think this is a discussion for a different show.
Yes.
No,
but
I
Soundgarden.
honestly think that if you're like, okay, Tom Morello, let's just throw him into this band at random, and you pick up Rage Against the Machine, and you're like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
This is pretty awesome. Go out and listen. That dude is like, I have close friends who interviewed him back in the day. He's a really cool guy. You know, obviously he made it through the 90s, so he's seen some shit. He's probably got the 1,000-yard stare. But, you know, like, enjoy the music, because that's going to be the music of record. This is the, like, you know, this is the third leg of the chair. You know, like, you had the Stones, the Beatles, and then you had, like, the Kinks, I guess.
Yeah.
I would put Soundgarden above that in the Pearl Jam Nirvana chair legs.
Like I said, I think they're the Slayer to Megadeth and Metallica.
I'm not going to say the Monkees. What's I'm trying to come up with a third leg in the early '60s.
Yes.
I was failing.
Yes. We would be
Yeah, and I
able to
don't
come
know
up with one. I think the Kinks work. But yeah, pretty much ditto on that. This album is strength is, you know, Chris Cornell's vocals and Kim Towell's guitar work. And I think mainly Chris Cornell's vocals, but the guitar work is fantastic. The accidentally on purpose creative use of meters and you know, musicianship and kind of cool instrumentations, and not just drop D tuning, but weird like combinations of like, you know, tunings, but kind of messing around with stuff and seeing what works, and coming up, but, you know, talented people messing around with stuff and seeing what works, and it turning out to be really cool and interesting and complex, and I think there's a reason it stands the test of time, and y'all should check it out. And there's a reason I said at the beginning of the show that I bunted on this one.
Yes, this was a slow pitch. This was easy. This was a lob.
This was right over the center of the plate.
Yeah, I'm not complaining.
Let's pick a classic album.
Well, for us, this is you know, this is regular vanilla. But
Yeah.
for some people that listen to this, they might not have been there.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, three
Sure.
of the four of us are middle class white children from the Midwest and Pennsylvania. So like we come from very, very
Pennsylvania's closer to the South than the Midwest. So
I'm
at
not
least this
arguing
part
about
of
that.
but the point still stands that
Yeah.
he's trying to make.
We had a similar upbringing, so if you come from somewhere else, you might not have been indoctrinated
And
into
I had
the
pretty much a
the
similar
altar.
I had
Grunge alt rock may have been in our wheelhouse, is what he's saying.
Yes.
When we were
I may still remember the first time I ever heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Yeah,
Literally.
and I may not be a white, you know, dude from the Midwest, and I may be a Cuban American Miamian, but we had 94.9 Zeta, we had alternative radio, we had all this stuff, and I remember it well, and this takes me back. But that is that, and that is been said. So now to the main event of the evening. None other than our haiku reviews. We are, of course, our haiku reviews, and I'm anticipating. So let's just get right to it. I'm gonna go with Patrick. What is your haiku review?
Solid grunge record. Cornell's voice was perfection. 3 songs too many.
All right, Drew. What do you got?
smart band, strong vocals, and clearly Seattle's crop. I need more flannel.
Flannel. Brett, what do you got?
A heroin era with vocals of a demon and of an angel.
Nice. I'm gonna go with masterful vocals, creative musicianship, rises above grunge. Which is, I think that's it for.
Fair.
That is it for another fun episode of Record Breakers. If you want to listen to this record, follow along with us. If you're not already, check out the playlist that we're maintaining. We're on Spotify, Beats Music. I gotta make sure, double check I have those updated fully. I'm probably Mog is down by the time this comes out, but which, you know, rest in peace, Mog. Love that service. But let us know if you have a service that you would like for us to curate a playlist for you, and we will do just that. We will take care of you. Just give us some feedback. On those playlists will be the next pick, and that will be courtesy of one Patty McSwag, Mr. Patrick Swagger. Patrick, what do we have next week?
So, in the interest of just, I wanted to pick a band that I really liked and an album by them that I really enjoyed. So I ended up with a little another Seattle outfit, but from sort of the more modern era. And that would be Minus the Bear and their last album from a couple of years ago, Infinity Overhead.
We look forward to that. Join us next week for that. But that's it. You can find us all over the internet. Patrick is at the Swagger. Brett is at Hibbity Bibbard, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XJuciferX. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. The email is recordbreakerspodcast@gmail.com. Rebelly.net for all of the other shenanigans I do. Be sure to keep an eye out for some fun stuff from those of us attending Anime Central, because we got some shenanigans coming up. That's this week, actually, if my timing is right. We'll be there this weekend, so look out for some fun projects from that. But until next time, hasta los huevos.
Chupa chew Drew when I kick old school.
What?